Welcome to the Bold Moves How Did You Know podcast, a podcast for the naturally curious who want to define their own path. Here, I'm sharing bold move stories that propelled my guests from curiosity to action, and in doing so, they've defined a path that is purposeful to them. Through these stories, I hope you'll be inspired to pursue your boldest dreams. Graduation season has inspired me to think about all the powerful stories and brilliant advice that my 28 Bold Move guests have shared since I launched this podcast. The collective wisdom we're generating here empowers all of us to keep writing our own stories and going for our goals and dreams. I put myself into the shoes of those graduates and imagined what amazing insight I could have learned if I heard all these stories as I was graduating. It's almost like fast forwarding into the future to ask my 40-year-old self what I could do after graduating to create a career and life I was proud of. I realized that through the last question I asked each of my guests, what do you know about being bold today you wish you knew earlier on? We've co-created a Bold Moves graduation speech. We're out from the other side of some of our in the trenches stories and our hardest moments, and we have advice we wish we could have given to our younger selves about being bold. So I put them all together in a clip-style podcast episode to inspire graduates who are just setting off into their new bold move journeys, as well as those in their early careers who are eager for mentorship, and all of us who need some extra encouragement to be bold as we face new challenges and opportunities.
I wish I would have known that things work out and the future version of you will know what to do and how to handle it. I think we get stressed over, what if this happens? And feel like we won't be enough to figure it out or know what to do. But I've consistently found when looking back at my track record that I always rose to the occasion. So we have to trust that you may not know exactly what you're going to do or how it's going to happen, but trust that the future version of you is going to know.
The biggest one for me personally and in starting my business is, and this I feel like is especially true for women, that we have sometimes difficulty imagining what's possible for us. And I think we're capable of so much more than we can imagine. And I personally didn't realize in the early years sort of maybe stifled my vision was for Greengate and for my life, and how I was willing to settle for smaller things. And I didn't let myself dream big, because I had all these reasons it wouldn't work. And when I learned that these are, it's often called limiting beliefs, when I learned, I don't actually want that belief. It's there, but I don't agree. I don't want it anymore. I was able to then question them, replace them with other thoughts. And that's a really powerful skill to learn.
I wish I'd known that other people's opinions of me are not a reflection of who I am, but more of who they are and their projections. I wish I'd never shrunk myself, my capabilities, what I bring to the table, in order to make the people around me more comfortable. I struggled, particularly when I moved to Australia. Ambitious nature was at times frowned upon, and I let people's discomfort with that dictate how I moved forward in my career. Mentorship from an empowered woman and coaching really helped me realize that was never about me, but was always about them. And if my blossoming made people uncomfortable, that was on them and not me. And, being bold can be really uncomfortable, but the more you show up as you are, the more it becomes second nature, and there's this freedom that's experienced when that happens.
The thing I often say that I quote, that's what he said, is put your own crown on your head. And if I even sooner claimed my title of who I want to be and I decided I am this person, even before I saw evidence of that, because that's what you do. You decide you want to be this person, and then your brain's going to start to find evidence of you being that person. That's a little strategy I wish I would have known sooner. And with a lot of my career coaching clients, we will switch a lot of their titles into the new title that they want to have and start bringing that in. And I will say, you want to be that kind of person? What would you be doing now? You start acting like that person now. You act as if. So I think that whole concept of acting as if, that's something that I wish I would have known sooner. And then also just that whole concept of like seeing problems as opportunities. You see a problem show up and you're like, oh, this is an opportunity some way. And you're curious and you start looking for the opportunity. That's something I wish I would have adopted sooner. And also messy action. Like the entrepreneurs I admire the most, leaders in any field, it's because they don't wait for it to be so perfect to take action. They're just taking action and learning as they go. And I think there's so much power in that. And I wish, speaking to my old self, that I wouldn't have been so focused on being a perfectionist, because man, you can create a lot of amazing things when you're ready to just come from a playful state and you're not attached. You're like, oh, that might have sucked. I'm learning. We're going to fix it. We're going to make it better. And it's just so powerful.
Being bold is really listening to that inner voice that holds the truth and knowledge, and then choosing to take action on it. So it's not just like hearing and listening, but also then choosing to say, all right, I'm going to take the next step and the next step towards that. And that's something I wish I knew, because I think I always knew I wanted a life of service. I wanted to help people, and I wasn't curious enough to explore what that could really look like. And so I just kind of pushed it aside for a bit and didn't necessarily take the bold moves. But when I did become a little bit more curious, I was able to take the action. And then here we are.
I feel like I operated out of fear for much of my life, but I knew I had it in me. When I listened to my heart throughout my life, and I knew what was meant for me, I had to make some bold moves. When I was a kid, we moved to this small town in Texas, and I was like, I can't go to school here. This is not for me. And I was like, you got to send me to boarding school. I got to go to a private school, a college preparatory school, Mom. And I ended up making that bold move. And I was scared before, but as I look back, there was not a choice. So I think sometimes for what we want, it's just look inside. I always say, feel your answer. Your heart knows everything you're supposed to do.
I wouldn't change anything, because I mean, this sounds very cliche, but every mistake and every wrong turn is always somehow something that brought us to where we are today. We did spend years and years kind of like looking for what we thought we wanted to do. And to some extent, you think like, well, if someone would have just given me the answer 10 years earlier, we could have opened the collector in our 20s instead of in our 30s. But then it might have been not as cool, because we maybe wouldn't have known as much. You know? What do you think?
Not to echo Michael too much, but also pretty much what he said, regardless of how much you plan or how much you know, very few things in life work out exactly as you might intend them to. So having a sense of flexibility and buoyancy, even in the most challenging of moments, is well worth it, because things do turn around even when you're at a low. And trying as much as possible to be realistic but optimistic is essential just for moving forward and being open to opportunity and the unexpected.
There are many moments that I played not to lose versus played to win. And if I have to find the chink in the armor, it's when I'm playing not to lose, I'm no longer on offense, I'm on defense. And defense is the worst thing for a business. I was talking to a client before I jumped on with you, and they're talking about a franchisee who's struggling. And they're like, they won't spend on marketing because they're bleeding cash. And I said, they're never going to spend on marketing. I go, they're praying for something that's never going to happen. They're never going to turn around this business. Because once the purse strings stop and you stop marketing and you start cowering, you go into the corner, there's nothing you can do. Your business is done. And that's playing not to lose versus saying, all right, maybe I need to take another mortgage out on a second mortgage on my home to get money so I can market my business because I believe in it. Like sometimes those big risks, those offensive risks create great moments of wealth. I saw a session with Magic Johnson. He's talking about how he had some money from his playing career, but he spent all this time trying to convince private equity to give him some money to go work on his investments. And he finally got one to say yes. He had been rejected 3 times by this PE firm. They gave him $50 million. He goes, I'll show you that I can make this money work. And so now he's on offense and he buys a mall property in an underprivileged market. And he said like he bought it for like 20 some million dollars and he sold it for 50 some million dollars. And he's like, see, I told you I can do this. But that's because he was on offense. He knew what he wanted as an outcome and he was willing to put everything on a line to get to it because he was confident that he would win. Sometimes that's the most critical thing. So that's probably my biggest advice on life and in business. And I think about it often, and doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I need to play to win, not play not to lose.
Understanding that the mind can be fickle and it's important to go with your gut, go with your heart. There's a reason you're being called. There's a reason that you're being inspired towards a certain goal, and listening to that is important. Sometimes it takes, tempering the mind and doing what you're most afraid of. Where you find fear is an important place to look for personal growth and development and what you're being called towards. And going up against scary decisions and scary life changes and moves, the courage comes after you confront those things, right? You're not going to just magically find courage to confront them. It's in confronting what you're afraid of. Courage comes afterwards. And so that's almost like a reverse psychology sort of thing. So for me, I've been trying to use that. I do get anxious. I do get nervous. I suffer from anxiety. And rather than letting that stand in my way, just imagining what my life would be like if I didn't take these chances, then you can almost use your anxiety to fuel you and to push you forward instead of to keep you held back. So if I've learned anything, I'd say it's how to use anxiety to your advantage and to confront the things that you're most afraid of. And maybe you'll be surprised.
I wish that I would have been more intentional about dreaming about my version of success. What's my ideal lifestyle? What's my idea of financial freedom? What work makes me feel the happiest? How can I design the career path of my making? And then to put context behind that, I think we all fall into the trap of listening to other people for their advice and guidance and don't think enough about what it is that we truly want at our gut. And it makes sense. Our brains aren't even developed, I think, till 25. And so we're seeking out opinions and advice from people, but it's often projected onto us as what they would want to do. It's very rare where you find people who have an objective lens who can help you think about it in the way that's best suited for you. And so, of course, life is learning. And so we're all learning, but I wish I would have tuned in to myself a little bit earlier on.
I wish somebody had reached down when I was in my 20s and 30s and just said, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I maybe wish I had more mentorship from people that were already there, that were role models for me. So I wish I'd had that guidance from others. Part of the problem was that women in technology, there just weren't that many role models. And the other thing is that women back in the day were not as open to helping others because if they were the token, they didn't necessarily want to highlight somebody else. I don't think that exists as much today. And I'm committed to putting the ladder down and helping everybody up with me. I believe that everybody should rise together, that it isn't a zero-sum game. So I want to help others so that we can all be better together.
I think the thing that I've learned is that people are there to help you more than you realize, and that you shouldn't be so hesitant to reach out and ask for help. And that it would be scary to call up somebody you don't know and ask them for advice or for an introduction, and that really a lot of things aren't about your resume or your paper, but what you know from relationships. And so I've learned now at this stage to be more comfortable doing that than I was originally.
I think being bold looks different to different people. And I think giving ourselves the permission to be bold in a way that is bold for us is the best beauty, but without comparison to other people. Because I feel like I'm bold in a lot of the moves I make, but if I compare myself to somebody else, I'm going to start shrinking back. Being bold in my actions without comparison have allowed me to embrace what bold is to me. Because a bold move for me might be like a small stair step for somebody else. A bold move for somebody else might be a small step for me. So if we learn to compare, it's tough. So I think making our bold moves based on like our internal selves, that's where the power comes in. Because that's where like the passion, the grit, like the yet it was bold. And then if we compare ourselves to thief of joy.
The boldest thing you can do is listen to other people and really, really, really listen. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to the advice that they're giving. You don't have to take all the advice. You don't have to follow their direction, but listen and hear what they're saying, because that's going to not only improve your communication skills and deepen your relationships, but it's going to give you clues as to what you admire and what you don't about them, about yourself. Pay attention to the world around you, right? Don't just barge forward. Listen, pause, take it in, learn the things and apply the lessons.
I wish I knew earlier how hard it is emotionally. Being bold is emotionally hard. It's hard because it's change. Change is not easy. Change is necessary and change is needed, and it has to happen. But no one said it's going to be easy, and you have to sit with those emotions, and it's hard sitting with those emotions. So when you touch a stove, what's the first thing you do? You jump. Your body, right? So your brain doesn't know the difference between a physical feeling and an emotional feeling. So when you have these emotions inside of you, guess what? You can't run away from it. If you touch the stove, you immediately, oh, okay, wow, it goes away. Well, you can't do that with the emotion. So that's why it's hard. You got to sit with it. Some things you just got to sit through. You got to go through it. Kind of like going through the fire. You got to go through it to get to the other side. And that's it. You got to go through it. And that's the hard part about it. And sometimes you have to go through it by yourself. I have friends and family, and we all do, but they can't be with you 24/7. You are with you 24/7. You are with you 24/7. So you got to love you. You got to understand who you are. And that's a journey. We're all on that journey. It's never, ever, ever going to stop.
My husband always says life has a way of working out. And we've been together now 10 years. And in the last 2 years, I've actually realized he's right. So I just wish I had realized that 20 years ago, because it does. It just has a way. So even in those darkest moments, those embarrassing moments where you did something that is just totally cringeworthy, or you made a bad move or not the right move, man, it's okay. It's okay. Just learn from it and then come back and do the next bold thing, or the thing that's right for you. But life has a way of working out, and it really does. It just does.
I still am, but I was even more so. I was a huge risk taker. And my parents called me the child of wanderlust. I lived in South Africa for a while in 1991, which happened to be the year Mandela was released. It was a very unusual time for a single young American woman to be living in South Africa. So I think there's something very empowering, terrifying, but empowering about taking big risks and taking them early. Now, these weren't necessarily career leaps that I was taking, but they're still risky. And so I think when you do that, you develop some muscles around the kind of risk that you can tolerate and being able to go out in the world and stand on your own 2 feet. So I think that was very helpful to me in everything I've done since then, because I stand back and I can say, oh, listen, I've moved around a lot. I lived in different countries. I've done this all solo. I can do this next thing. So it kind of gives you a confidence that I don't think I would have had otherwise.
I think I learned it earlier on, and now I actually really understand and believe it. I had a professor in undergrad at Syracuse University, Jerome Witkin, and he told me directly one day when we were looking at a drawing I was doing, he said, you have to make every mark as though the world depends on it. So he was saying you have to be bold. Everything you do has to be done with intention, like we were saying. And you just really have to believe that it matters. What you are doing matters, and each part of what you are doing matters. And I think I've lived my life as an artist, creating work, knowing that each paint stroke that I make is important to the work or important in the process of the work unfolding. But I think looking back, like just really knowing the truth in that.
Stop seeking external validation. That's a big one. We all want to know that we're doing something that people like. And of course, with all these ventures that I'm doing, I have to feel the pulse of people and make sure that what I'm saying is actually resonating, but not as far as your ideas or opinions or whatever. Those are things that are part of you, and not everyone's going to like you. Just like you don't like everyone either, right? So if we allow ourselves to go, yeah, it's okay if I don't like some people. So I guess it's okay if some people don't like me or what I have to say. But you know what? If enough people who need this message, if it gets to them, that's what matters most. And so if we can, just learn to stop seeking the external validation and trust that inner knowing, for me, that's what really helped me be even bolder than ever.
Being bold, whether you do it quietly or loudly, whether you do it as a perfectionist, whether you do it as a fly by the seat of your pants person, I don't care how you do it, but turning up the volume on who you are as a person, making yourself a person of substance, and being assured of who you are, which I think is, to me, that's the core of being bold. It is going to piss people off. And that is not your problem. It is not your job. It is no person's job to walk around making sure that they don't make anybody else mad by being themselves.
I think for me, boldness is exciting. And I think when I was younger, the boldness was very ego driven, meaning you're being watched. You need to do this. And, I said I'm going to do it, so I'm just going to do it. And I think there was a value in that. But I think the boldness now is more around legacy of my children watching mom build a life by design and not be stuck in a life that I felt like a tiger in a cage.
Definitely persistence. Definitely persistence. I mean, when your life's at stake, you will have that persistence. But why is it only when our life's at stake? I guess. I think we give up a lot easier if it's something that's not life-threatening. And we shouldn't. We shouldn't. So I wish I knew that. I wish I knew that incredible things are possible. As you know, my story started when I'm 50 years old. I'm 61. I'd lived half my life before I even knew that I was capable of telling stories, writing, sharing my wisdom, getting up on stage. Like, no, I just wouldn't have ever done those things before. And I really, want to impart that. Just have a look-see inside of you and plan your next bold move.
I think the idea of authenticity and doing things because I want to do them and feel it's right and that it inspires and ignites me rather than what society thinks of as success or as what your next move should be. As you said, of that bold move can be defying what
society or what the world expects you to do next, and just doing what feels right for you and for what's going to bring you the most joy.
It's absolutely okay to begin when you have no idea how it's going to end. Because if you don't begin, you don't even know. You don't, like, the book doesn't start. You have to write the first page, the first chapter to get anywhere. And just go for it. Like, you don't need to be fully baked. Just go for it.
It would have been more open to new growth opportunities, exploring different types of podcasts and expanding my mind instead of just I was a lot of times trying to go to workshops that I would get to the next level of my career, when it's just like, why can't I take a class or workshop on anything and everything? It doesn't have to be industry specific. Just open my mind to other things that maybe I'm not as knowledgeable on. It could be like political science, or take a class that has nothing to do with advertising.
I wish that I had not wasted so much time. And that probably sounds funny, because we just got done talking about how I was general counsel by age 40. And so that sounds like it was very fast. But I wasted a lot of time, not even thinking about the expectations that other people had of me. I wasted time thinking about my own expectations, whether that was, oh, I should be in academia and that's what this looks like, and that's the path. And then creating this artificial construct of what that would be. Or I should be a big time trial lawyer, and creating an artificial construct of what that would be. I wish I had known, again, I'm going to use another cliche, go with the flow and be in the moment and check in with myself regularly, instead of deciding this is what this must look like. This is what I think this should look like. I think that I would have had a much easier time finding my truth earlier on in my career, because even though I was doing some really amazing things and made some great decisions for myself, ultimately there was also a lot of agitation and, I'm not sure. And is this going to get me to that next thing? And I look back on that now and I realize I wish it hadn't taken until age 35 to really start being my authentic self.
If I had advice for younger people, it is find people who are bold. They may be people you know. They may be people you do not know. Hearing these stories, what you're doing, Kristen, bringing these stories to people is so valuable. I just wish you had come along a few decades earlier. Having those, they could be a mentor. It could be someone you don't know. But having these examples of bold people and tapping into them as resources. So whether that means mentoring someone, if they're in your organization, it could be reading someone's books and absorbing, if there are bold people that you're like, wow, that's great. Read the books, do the learning.
How big the dividends are and how long they pay off for. The more you're being bold and doing who you are and doing what you want to do, it will pay off in the future, even if it means that you failed on the first step or the second step or whatever. It doesn't matter. Failure is part of it. It's going to happen. You got to learn. I think a lot about the downside risk of failing. Like, what are we comfortable with? And if you're not comfortable with it, don't do it. Everybody's comfort is different for everything, but it goes back to the investing in yourself. You're going to learn to solve those challenges and problems, and you're going to meet people and just get out there and do whatever you're thinking of. And the dividends from bold moves pay off over and over and over and over again.
That wraps up all 28 guests' advice to their younger self about what they wish they would have known about being bold earlier on. I hope it inspired you, especially if you're a new graduate going out and taking on the world. Let this be some advice to help you on your new journey. If you want to listen to those episodes in full, just go back. There's a whole catalog of interesting bold move stories waiting for you in this show. I hope to see you there, and we'll keep doing this week after week after week. All right, bye for now.